Welcome, everyone. So, inshallah, we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the Islamic Social Services Association of the USA webinar, our table talk on mom's mental and emotional well-being, which we feel is a key to family wellness. My name is Shema Imam. I'm a suicide prevention social worker here in Atlanta, Georgia. As well, I'm the secretary of the Islamic Social Services Association USA, and I'm honored to be your MC for today's event. Inshallah, before we begin introducing our speakers and our topic, I would like to take an important moment to begin with something that we all is the priority of our lives, our reason for being. Inshallah, we'll start with Surah Al-Fatiha to remember Allah and our commitment. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. Maliki Yawmiddin, sovereign of the day of recompense. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. It is you we worship, and you we ask for help. اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Guide us to the straight path. صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. Ameen. The path of those upon you whom you have bestowed favor, not of those who have evoked your anger, nor of those who go astray. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to all of our panelists and all of our participants and audience members from maybe internationally. I'll have to look at the chat, but definitely from US and Canada. Welcome to everyone. I would like to just start by introducing our host for today, the Islamic Social Services Association. So this is a 501(c) nonprofit designed to advocate and support mental health and social services within Muslim communities and for Muslims around the US. It was established in 1999, and for over 20 years, ISSA-USA has worked to obtain ways to ensure the Muslim community is provided with adequate resources. And as a response to the lack of Muslim professional presence, 60 Muslim social workers, mental health professionals, and counselors decided to come together to address the social issues pertaining to the Muslim community. And together, these leaders took the initiative to create this support system where Muslims can turn to in times of need. And we're very blessed to be celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, alhamdulillah. And we have an event coming up in November, which inshallah we would like to let you know about as the months progress. So some of our projects are including the Diversity and Inclusion Project, the Children of Adam Project, the Sakina Healthy Marriage Initiative. We advocate for mental health and social services that cater to the needs of Muslims in North America. This includes food, clothing, shelter, income assistance, employment assistance, family life and marriage education, mental and behavioral health, family and individual counseling, socialization, recreational services, medical and legal assistance. But all of these we do as kind of an umbrella organization and as a support to the direct providers. So we hope to, use these methods to bring change and also to collaborate with other organizations to make things better for all Muslims and others here in North America. And as an organization, we hope to provide the necessary factors for capacity building in order to shift towards a socially sustainable family and community. And we're also really blessed today to have two of our sponsors with us. We want to thank them, the Khalil Center, as well as the Before the Nikah Institute. So thank you to both of you. And now I would like to invite ISSA's co-founder and president, Dr. Anisa Nader, to share why we wanted to present this event topic today. Dr. Anisa.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Shema. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with our panel members and our guests. We decided that as part of the work we do, the educational work, the advocacy work that we do with regard to the Sakina Healthy Marriage Initiative, and that this was a month in which we honor mothers, and that this is Mental Health Awareness Month, we thought this would be an appropriate time to begin a conversation, a dialogue about mothers' mental health and emotional well-being. You know, this is a conversation that we don't have very often, that we don't have enough. Um, I'll probably share this again, but I was recently in a driving with the two of my friends, and we realized in that conversation that the three of us had even had um, miscarriages, and we 40 years of knowing each other, and we've never spoken about it. That says to me that this is a conversation that we just don't talk enough about. When we go through the panel, I'll share a little bit more because I have personal and professional reasons. But my hope is that this will start a conversation. This is not, we don't have all the answers, but we think it's an important conversation and dialogue to begin. So thank you very much for those of you who have joined us today.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Anisa. Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge that this is a topic that is very dear to our hearts. And as Dr. Anisa said, all of us have experiences that we don't all know about each other. And I would like to acknowledge that because this topic is very dear to our hearts, it can be a source of strong emotions. And these emotions can be positive as well. These emotions can be challenging. And if you feel the need to step away from our discussion to take time for yourself, either during the webinar or after, we welcome you to do so. Two of the resources we would recommend as resources that you can reach out to at any time, 24 hours a day, are the 988 Crisis Support Line. This is open all over the US and I think also in Canada, 24 hours a day. And another resource we would like to share that we've just recently learned about is for new and expectant mothers. It's 1-833 TLC Mama. And I'll have Sister Damie to just add that to the chat. So again, 988 or 1-833 TLC MAMA. These are two resources you can reach out to at any time if you feel the need for extra support, given the topics that are brought up today. I make a dua, may Allah make this a beneficial event for all of us today and help us to constructively use our past and our experiences with and about motherhood, either as children of mothers, which we all are, mothers and grandmothers ourselves, as well as those who support mothers. Ameen. And before we go into our panel introductions, I would like to acknowledge a very special member of our audience who's here with us today, Dr. Nicole Montero. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Nicole. Dr. Nicole is a licensed psychologist. Walaikum salam. Is a licensed psychologist, life transformation coach, and author and speaker. And inshallah, our sister Damie will add her information to our chat as well. Dr. Montero, we know you only have a few minutes today. We really appreciate that you were able to join us, and inshallah, we'll have an opportunity to invite you again on an ISSA event to learn more about your work. But we would love to hear if you have a few moments, just a few words from you about why this topic of mother's mental health is important to you and what it means to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am so happy to be here, even if it's just for a short time, because I think gatherings like this and events like this, where we get to focus on not only physical well-being, but mental and emotional well-being, and understand its connection overall to our spiritual well-being. And I think as mothers or daughters of mothers or mothers to be, like, we all know a mother or have experienced a mother in one way or another. It's important to acknowledge how this experience impacts us. So first and foremost, we are impacted by how we were mothered, whether we were mothered by our own biological mothers, other caretakers. Mothering implies some sort of nurturing and caregiving. And so how we were mothered has a huge impact on how we are now, but also how we may potentially mother should we become mothers ourselves. And I want to just acknowledge that we are not all going to become or be mothers in the sense of physically giving birth or raising a child. That makes us no less of a woman, or it doesn't impact our value as a human being, right? And I also want to acknowledge that not all of us were raised by our mothers. Maybe we lost our mothers. Maybe we, there were other circumstances by which we did not have the mother that birthed us. And I just want to acknowledge that. It doesn't mean that, again, we are any less worthy or we can't be healthy ourselves. It's really just about understanding the nature of our experience in terms of if there were things in our own upbringing that, we weren't mothered in the way that we wanted to. And if that's the case, then we need to acknowledge that and get help with that, whether it's counseling or therapy or spiritual guidance, something that helps us to heal from that. And it's important to know that how we were mothered or nurtured has an impact, should we become mothers ourselves, on what our experience is going to be like with our children. So the healing is important for our own healing, but also for how we interact with the future generations, whether we give birth to children, whether we in some way are involved in taking care of them. And so I think this topic is so important because the emotional and mental and, of course, physical aspects of motherhood are ongoing. From the time of thinking about becoming a mother, if that's what is going to be, if we become mothers, to the time of conceiving and carrying a child, giving birth to a child, or adopting a child, raising a child, through the different stages. It is an ongoing process. It's not something that you arrive at. Motherhood is a journey. It's not a destination. Okay. And so to be able to learn to take care of yourself and your needs during this journey, I think is vital. So much about what is portrayed around motherhood involves thinking about sacrifice and giving and, pouring into others. And that is certainly a huge part of it, right? I think once you decide to somehow be involved as a mother or a motherhood role in taking care of someone else, you have to understand that your role is to help take care of their needs. But that does not exclude uh, having your own needs and needing things yourself, and knowing that not only do you give, you need to receive, and you need to be able to get help, and you need to be able to draw on a village, right? And I think so many times we feel guilty as women for needing things, for not having the energy, for feeling down, for feeling depleted or drained, like all of the things that we go through as women. I think we're made to feel guilty for that. And that keeps us caught in a cycle of not asking for help, not reaching out for help, not acknowledging that we've hit our limit, right? That not having boundaries, all of those things. And so if there's just one sort of message that I would like to leave with you all in this short, time that I'm talking to you, is to give yourself permission to have needs that are outside of just pouring in to somebody else, right? To be a good mother, you have to be able to understand your own needs. Because when you are completely drained or depleted, every cliche that we've heard, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. Put your own oxygen mask on before you try to put someone else's on. All of these things we hear over and over because they are actually true. In your role of mothering or caretaking, if you don't take time for yourself, if you don't take time to pause and understand how you're feeling or what you need or what's lacking or the help that you need, that's not going to help you be better. That's actually going to put you in a position of being completely burnt out and drained. And how that manifests is we're short with our kids, or we don't have patience, or we can't, give them what we need because we're so focused on giving them what we need, what they need, that we don't take time for ourselves, right? So I think my key message is giving yourself permission to take time for yourself. That could literally be like if you have kids, small kids in the house, a time where it's don't come into mommy's room. I need rest. I need I need to regroup, right? I think a lot of us, a lot of the strain of motherhood is very mental. So you could be sitting down and someone could be thinking you're relaxing, but you're literally going through who has the next doctor's appointment, whose school show is next, and this person has to be here. Oh my God, summer camp time. Like you literally have so much mental calculations and things going on in your head that you have to not be guilted into feeling like you're not doing anything because of so much of the work of motherhood is mental and emotional. So giving yourself permission to take time for yourself, to set some limits, to set some boundaries around your time, your mental space, what you need, speaking up and telling people, okay, I'm unable to do that right now. And the people, I mean, it could be the people in your household, like your partner, like your kids, you know, as kids are getting older, giving them more responsibility, not feeling like because you're the mom, you know everything and you have to do everything, right? So it's like really giving yourself permission to do a little bit less so that what you do, you can do it with the most amount of balance and well-being for yourself. Okay. So that's the main thing I want you to take away. And as a mother myself, as a wife myself, and as a psychologist and coach, a therapist, I work with women all of the time. And the biggest challenge that we all have is giving ourselves permission to not do everything and to not overfunction and neglect ourselves and you know not take care of our needs. So in the beginning of that journey you might feel a little bit guilty when you start taking more time for yourself, when you start setting you know more boundaries and limits. You might feel a little guilty. That's okay, it's normal. A little guilt is not going to kill you. It's better to feel guilty for saying no than it is to say yes and have a bunch of built up and pent up resentment. The resentment is going to eat away at you and impact your mental and emotional well-being more than a little bit of guilt, which is probably going to dissipate and go away soon, because the more you start setting boundaries and communicating those and letting your family and people around you know what you need, they're going to get on board because they're going to notice that mom, wife, whoever, auntie is a little happier when we all pitch in and we all, you know, help her out versus expecting her to do everything for us. Okay. So I apologize that I can't stay the entire time. I think this is such an important discussion, and I hope to be able to join you all for future ones. And I just want to say, wherever you are on your motherhood path or journey or womanhood path or journey, you know, kudos to you. Give yourself on a pat on the back and acknowledge all that you are contributing to not only your family, but like the community and the broader world. Because without us, the world would fall apart, right? We know that, right? We are such a part of keeping this just society, civilizations, and all of that going. So it's okay to take time for yourself and acknowledge yourself. Okay. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. And I hope to see you in the future.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Nicole Montero. That was just the perfect way for us to begin our talk today. And everything you said, I want to highlight, mashallah. But the one thing that really just spoke to me at this moment in time is that motherhood is a journey and not a destination. And I want us all just, you know, for the next hour or so, imagine that this is an oasis on the side of the road on that motherhood journey that we are all on. Take off your backpacks, have a seat, inshallah. We'll just sit in a circle and talk for a few minutes and just share our care for each other, inshallah, today. Um, So what I would like to start with is to also I wanted to welcome the men who are here with us on this chat. I wanted to say thank you so much for your support and your desire to learn more and learn from the women around you that you care about that are on this motherhood journey. We welcome you and we look forward to hearing your thoughts as well. So I would like to start today's event by introducing our three panelists, as well as our moderator. So I'd like to start with my sister, Noreen Ahmed. She is a Pakistani-American Muslim based in Chicago, and she has over a decade of finance experience and is now graduating with a master's in clinical mental health and counseling at Northwestern University, mashallah. She completed her practicum training at Khalil Center, who is one of our sponsors for today, and is currently interning at Catalyst Counseling Group. As the founding director of SEMA, a national mental health organization for Muslims, she has advocated for mental health awareness through support groups, workshops, and media features on NPR, PBS, NewsHour, and Psychology Today, mashallah. Additionally, Noreen is a relationship and trauma coach specializing in relationship dynamics, emotional healing, and personality disorders, delivering workshops worldwide. Apart from all of this, mashallah, she's also a mother of 4 children, balancing her personal and professional commitments. Welcome to you, Sister Noreen. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my
An
pleasure. Our
honor.
pleasure. Alhamdulillah. We'll just introduce the other two speakers, and then we would like to hear more from you, inshallah. Our second panelist is Sister Sabrine Azhar. She is an associate marriage and family therapist with a Master's of Arts degree in counseling psychology from Santa Clara University. Her theoretical orientation is integrative, and she believes that every individual is unique and deserves a safe, warm, non-judgmental, and caring therapeutic environment to facilitate their healing journey. And she incorporates a holistic approach to therapy that's tailor-made to meet the client's needs and goals, building on their strengths and inner resources. She incorporates a family systems approach and builds in mindfulness, positive psychology, and narrative therapy. Sabrine has worked in clinical and school-based settings. She's carried out research focusing on the experiences and needs of Muslim American youth. And she also has experience working with parents and families in building stronger bonds and improving relationships by developing tools to foster connection and understanding within families. She provides services in English and Urdu. And outside of her clinical work, Sabrine holds close to 20 years of experience, mashallah, working in local and national nonprofit organizations, serving diverse communities. She's passionate about community wellness on all levels and in creating healing and therapeutic spaces for individuals, families, and communities. Welcome to you, Sister Sabrine.
It's good to be here.
Alhamdulillah. And our third panelist is Dr. Anisa Nader, who we've heard from just recently as the president of ISSA. She's a retired Arizona State University social work professor, where she taught for over 17 years. Additionally, Dr. Nader has taught at Ottawa University, Gateway Community College, and MESA Community College in Arizona. She's also enjoyed a fulfilling career as a social worker for over 40 years and continues to mentor social work students. Excuse me. And Dr. Nader provides diversity and inclusion training and education program development and serves as a speaker on the subject. And she's provided training programs for the National Association of Social Workers in Arizona, as well as Michigan, as well as Hospice of the Valley and Lutheran Social Services, another South Banner Hospice, and law firms as well as other universities. And she combines her passion for social work and law to promote social justice and legal access. She also coordinates Sakina Healthy Marriage Initiative, and she provides the Before the Nikah Marriage Prep course and other premarital education programs. Welcome to you, Dr. Anisa. And before I pass on the floor to our speakers, I would like to introduce our moderator for today. Sister Anjum Ashraf Ali is a member of the board of directors for ISSA-USA. She has her Master's of Arts degree in Islamic Studies, concentrating on women and children's rights in Islamic law, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations as well as French. I'm sorry, I'm going to take a break from, I'm getting over a little bit of a cough myself. I would like, I would like to introduce, ask Sister Anjum to continue on and introduce herself. And then we inshallah will begin with the panel.
Sorry about that. Okay, no problem, Shima. All right. So yeah, alhamdulillah, thank you all for having me today as a moderator. So I have my graduate degree in a Master's of Arts degree in Islamic Studies. I focused on children's rights and women's rights in Islamic law. My bachelor's was in international affairs. And then after that, I had about 20 years of experience as a dialogue facilitator and public speaker, specifically around racial justice, equity, and reconciliation. And I worked a lot with different organizations on the nonprofit sector and the international non-governmental organization sector also to help people do trust building work in workshops and also to help them with DEI, with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also was involved in a lot of interfaith work with evangelical Christians, as well as Jews for Muslims. I am currently, I have been a professor of Islamic studies, but I'm currently now a health insurance broker working with senior citizens, those with low income and special needs. And this area of work is particularly important to me because I had my own journey of trauma and healing that I went through. And as a daughter, a mother, a wife, and I decided to go ahead and study more on psychology and take my own initiative. And that was how I went into doing a certification for strategies for awareness, trauma awareness, and resiliency. And I did that through Eastern Mennonite University Center for Justice and Peace Building. And then I began to do coaching for relationships and trauma awareness in particular, and became an advocate because I like to assist people in their journey on healing and finding the correct therapy and modalities and treatments that they can use for trauma. Currently, we've been doing for ISSA talks in my area, which is Richmond, Virginia, on mental health awareness, and we've been partnering with ICNA Relief on that. I have two young adult children of mixed ethnicity, and I also volunteer with a lot of human rights activist movements. So thank you so much. This is really a pleasure and an honor to be able to moderate today. And because I feel like we've got some stellar panelists here, mashallah. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And I want to thank you guys for bringing your expertise and experience today to help us discuss the role and kind of the issue around mental health and mothers and their well-being, because as you all know, the Quran talks about being kind to your parents, but in both particular verses where it talks about that, Allah specifically goes and emphasizes mothers right after. And so this is not to, to kind of do a kind of a bias, pitch here by any means, but it is a really, really important issue for us because we know full well that Allah has given us awareness, but we also are aware from our own experiences, and I don't think there's a single individual out there who doesn't have this awareness that what happens with mothers impacts families. I mean, that's just kind of, a factual statement right there. So I don't think this topic is covered enough, and so that's why I'm really excited that we decided to pursue this as a table talk. We don't have all the answers. This is a dialogue. We want to kind of open the floor, open discussion with our panelists today. We will get some Q&A at the end, inshallah. And so we do want to hear from the audience. We will field those questions once we're done hearing from the panelists on a couple of discussion points. And then this is something that may be, ongoing. We may be able to do more talks. I mean, I really don't think there's any way we can fit the range and gamut of what is entailed in the issue of mothers' mental health and emotional well-being, and I say spiritual well-being added into that, because we know that as Muslims we try to look at the whole person, whether it's, and not just the mental, not just emotional, spirituals included. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in right now, and I just want to make sure that the audience understood that, because we do look forward to probably getting more of these sessions in and elaborating on whatever we can touch upon today, inshallah. So let me go ahead and just kind of start with our panelists, asking them, why is this such an important topic to you? And I'll start, if it's okay, with Sister Noreen.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we all have mothers. And, this topic about mothers' mental health is so close to my heart, because SEMA, the organization I started, is named after my own mother. Her name was Seema Ahmed. And she struggled with her mental health. She had bipolar depression, schizoaffective disorder, and being a child growing up with a mother with mental illness, it was very challenging, especially with the stigma that we had, especially, 20 years ago. We didn't have social media. We didn't have this kind of awareness that the new generation has. Or let's say even 30 years, when I was a kid, there was so much stigma in our community. So even my own family wouldn't tell us children exactly what was wrong with my mom. They would just say, oh, she's, she just doesn't feel good. They used the term chemical imbalance. We didn't know what that meant. And so we're growing up witnessing our mother, with bipolar, having shifts in moods and things like that. And it was very challenging, and also having to kind of keep things a secret from, the community, from our classmates, what's going on at home. And then another thing that happens when you have a parent with mental illness, it can happen if you have a parent with substance abuse, things like that. Sometimes children become what's called parentified. And in my case, in my siblings' case, we became what's called parentified children, where we were having to step in the role and be responsible for taking care of our mother, taking care of like household things. We had to be very self-sufficient. So you take on these roles before you're, mentally ready to take on these roles, and that carries with you into adulthood. So one of the topics I'll touch on now, if it's okay, is like a little bit of intergenerational trauma. So in my case, being in that caretaker role, you're always, as women, like we are nurturers, we're caretakers, we want to, that's natural to us. But sometimes that role can be unhealthy. You can be too much, right? So we call that term codependency, where you're always wanting to fix and, solve other people, kind of savior mode. You're fixing and solving other people's problems. And so you go into adulthood, and subconsciously you don't realize this pattern becomes familiar to you. You're used to the chaos, you're used to fixing people, and you subconsciously find partners where you fall into that very familiar role. So that was something that happened with myself. Like in marriage, I was kind of in that caretaker role and overextending myself and doing too much, not taking care of myself. And we don't realize like how this then impacts our own children, So a lot of times, we see people come into therapy and, I'm now, as we said, graduating with my license and master's in clinical mental health counseling. So, I see clients, and now when we're asking people, like, tell us about your childhood, it's because there's blind spots that you don't see how your childhood like impacted you, and now you're seeing the results of that in your patterns in your adulthood, and how that's playing out in your relationships with your spouse, with your children, and how it's impacting everybody. So yeah, so this, I always want to be a mom. Alhamdulillah, I have four beautiful children. I'm so blessed. And this topic is just, yeah, near and dear to my heart because of my own mother, and then my role as a mother, taking care of my own mental health. I had to kind of unlearn patterns in myself, how to set boundaries, how to, effectively communicate, how to, get my feelings and needs met. These were all things like I wasn't aware of because I didn't have a mother kind of teaching me those things because she was so ill. So I'm so blessed that Allah put me in a position where I can take what I experienced and help other people so that they can not go through the same like unhealthy things, and then hopefully, live and thrive, as mothers themselves, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Sister Noreen. Sister Sabrine, if you don't mind jumping in and explaining your,
Yeah,
yeah, your
Jazakallah
feelings on
khair.
this.
Jazakallah khair, and Jazakallah khair for sharing that, Noreen. I think for me, what everyone has said, I don't think there's any denying how important mothers are, but it's really that mothers are pillars of society and pillars of our own kind of development and childhood and adulthood even. I don't think, I'm an adult, but I don't think I'll ever stop needing my mom. Like there are like little things I'll call her for. Um, and sometimes it's humorous. Like I'll call her for, does this eggplant look like it's gone bad? Or like, but it's these little moments that are really precious and can be a bond between mothers and children, not just daughters, but sons as well, and really forming the the strengths that we have. So I know Noreen touched upon the intergenerational trauma, but I also feel like what we often forget to talk about are intergenerational strengths that we also get from our mothers. And they've been through their stories and they carry that trauma, but they also carry the strength and resilience. And we see that with mothers in Palestine as well right now, how that is really informing the movement of people just like picking up the pieces and carrying forward. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm recovering from a cold and I'm also sick, so maybe that's why my volumes are, but I'll try to speak louder, inshallah. Jazakallah for mentioning that. Um, the other part I think is because mothers' mental health is often ignored and the stigma is there. I think there's this pressure that mothers feel that they have to have it all, and I think Dr. Nicole touched on it as well. But in in having kind of preventive measures and having to even this conversation that we're having, I can kind of tell like people are really feeling that that element of being seen as mothers, right? And that's one of the basic needs that we have as humans is to be seen. And so to have these conversations and to have dialogue and to have knowledge will not only equip mothers, but also families and develop strong families and society, which I think right now we're really struggling with because there's a lot of fragmentation in society. But just kind of like echoing what everyone had said, I wanted to just kind of give a short intro on why this is important.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Sister Sabrine. Dr. Anissa.
Thank you both, Noreen and Sabrine. So why this is important for me. This is important personally and professionally for me. Personally, my mom also suffered from mental illness as a middle schooler. I think it's when the onset occurred. And it was, even now as I speak about it, because I don't often talk about it, I really, the pain and uh, the challenge, was, it was traumatic, really. And of course, as a child, I felt like I was the only one. I didn't know anybody else at the time who was experiencing a circumstance in which their mom was not well because of her mental health. Um, my husband and I often talk about how my mother and his mother went through some difficulties in terms of both mental and behavioral health issues. And so personally, I think that is what got me into the field, really. The challenges that my mom went, and then seeing how it impacted um, my siblings and um, I think is a very big part of why I believe this is important and why I'm here. But in addition to that, I'm a mom. I'm the mother of three adults, and I have a bonus son. I remember a period in my life when I even said, I wonder if the world would be better without me. I'm very grateful that I had my children and they were there to remind me of why life is so important. And mommy, get up, mommy, I need this and that. That's like changed it all around. Um, so I think that that is also important. And currently I have three friends, very dear friends whose young adult children just recently passed away. Um, and so they're grieving and mourning, and we're grieving and mourning with them. And I don't think we talk enough about the grief and loss, um, because we often think it'll be our children will bury us, not that we'll bury our children. But these mothers are going through that right now, and our community is experiencing that, and even us and their friends are not sure what to say, what to say, how to help them, what do we do? Um, and then, of course, I'm a professional with clients who come to me with their own challenges. And I work in the prevention area because I work on the premarital end of things. And I work to help us prepare for for the challenges. I want to help us as moms prepare. And I work with some of the folks on this webinar today to prepare women before they become mothers to be the mothers that they would like to be. But also I work to prepare men to be the best husbands and the most support that they can be. Because one of the things I recognize is that because my mom and dad didn't have that kind of preparation, my dad wasn't able to be the kind of support to my mom that she would have needed. Um, and I think that those are some of the important things. So, the childhood experiences, the adverse childhood experiences are real. Sister Letitia is here and she talks about that in our course. And I think that this is why I think this is so important.
Thank you. And actually, since you brought that up, actually, let's go ahead and kind of go into that topic because this piece about our own childhoods, right, and what has happened. Sister Sabrine, if you don't mind giving us a little bit of understanding on the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences studies, and what those involve when it comes to mothers and their own history.
Right. So the ACEs was a really profound study done by Kaiser and CDC that kind of touched upon how experiencing trauma, neglect, abuse, different forms of adverse experiences or negative experience in childhood can affect our development down to even physical health. So a lot of times people think like trauma or neglect or abuse can impact mental health, but it can even impact physical health. And actually a side note, often physical health symptoms, especially like in our communities when where there's stigma, it manifests in physical symptoms. Like people will say, you know, I'm from the Desi community, South Asian community, they'll say like, you know, my blood pressure is high or I have cholesterol. But oftentimes that can be trauma that can be impacting our physical symptoms. But the ACEs study was really pivotal in kind of identifying how these adverse experiences can inform how we develop over time and how as in adulthood. So if you have more than four, kind of that there's like a scale that you go to in questions, but if you have more than four, that can have a tremendous impact on especially mothers and children. There's actually studies even on relating socioeconomic impact with adverse childhood experiences and ACEs, and that kind of correlates with how I think like one of the things that perhaps we can touch upon too is how systemic racism and you know so systemic kind of societies like the way that socioeconomic status impacts the resources available, the accessibility to resources, that also has an impact on ACEs. But in identifying ACEs, there is a preventive measure that we can take in what Dr. Anissa touched upon, as well as informing and providing people with care and knowledge so that we do reduce the number of adverse experiences, and that causes for healthier families, healthier mothers, healthier interpersonal relationships, and all that aspect.
Dr. Anissa, did you want to also add into that a little bit more?
No, thank you, Sabrine. I just, one of the things that I think is also important to say is, you know, not only, the ACEs study was pivotal. The other piece of that was the resilience side of it, you know, is that, you know, I mean, for me, learning that had this high ACEs score was just it explained a lot of things for me, but at the same time learning that there was this other side to it where I you know, resilience is part of that. You know, not only do we have the traumas, but we have the ability to overcome. I recently went to a conference, and there's a gentleman, he's part of a group that he started called ACEs Overcomers, you know, and the reality that, yeah, we many of us, and many of us may have experienced more than four of the ACEs, so, you know, be at a difficult place and may not even know why. So the first piece of that is understanding what happened and then being able to overcome. The resilience factor is a really important piece of that. So I think that's the hope in it, you know. I think that's a really important piece. But you know, on the preventive side, let's work together as a village to try to prevent people from experiencing these traumas as much as we can. And I think that's part of why we're here today.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Can I
Noreen.
just add something? There's another side to adverse childhood experiences that I've read about. Is called positive childhood experiences. So a way to kind of counteract if your child is in this situation where maybe you got divorced and maybe they experienced abuse, emotional neglect, you know, some of the things that show up on the ACEs. So they might have four or more, maybe there's mental illness in the family. How do we counteract that while they're children? So positive childhood experiences are things like making sure that the child feels that they're able to talk to their family about their feelings. They should feel that their family stands by them during difficult times. Do they feel safe and protected by an adult in their home? Do they have a sense of belonging at school? Do they feel supported by friends? Do they have at least two non-parent adults who take genuine interest in them? It could be a teacher, a coach, and then have them enjoy participating in community traditions, get them involved in, you know, Masjid that today's Sunday school, things like that, to give them that sense of belonging in community. So these are just some positive ways that we can kind of counteract the adverse things that are sometimes out of our control. So what can we control to kind of foster healthy, childhood experiences?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think with you guys having touched on this, and even Sister Sabrine bringing up even like the racism, the Islamophobia piece, there's a lot of different moving pieces that are happening right now to children and to mothers having to kind of handle that. And then even these children growing up and kind of having to figure out how to overcome those. Speaking of that, I kind of wanted to and I'm kind of laughing a little bit because it wasn't funny at the time, but my son, he ended up being at a swimming pool, and the lifeguard asked him what if he was Muslim. And this is years ago when he was just a small child. He must have been about 10 years old, and he and his friend panicked and they ran away. They didn't want to tell that they were Muslim. And so, and so we had to have a long conversation about this and kind of explore what was going on internally and why he would do that. And this is here in the United States. But I think, when you talked about these positive childhood experiences, it brought to mind the issue of security, secure attachment. And I'd like to get a little bit more from you guys on that piece about how moms can navigate that for themselves, because they may not have had that secure attachment. They're struggling with secure attachment now in their relationships, or how they can get that for their kids and be there for their kids in that way. And I'm going to throw that out there. So any one of you want to jump in? Sister Sabrine, did you want to go first?
Sure, I can start. And I think kind of like relating to what Dr. Nisa was also sharing before with the ACEs is knowledge is power, right? And our deen also really encourages to seek knowledge. And often we think of that in Islamic studies and, the fiqh and Aqidah, which is all very important, but it's also in these elements of everyday life of motherhood and parenting. Because I remember teaching about ACEs and doing a trauma-informed class on for teachers, how to teach like with trauma-informed approach. And there were teachers that were like in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they had never heard about ACEs. And for them, that was so informative to know about themselves so that they can also kind of approach the students from that, but also approach themselves. And then with secure attachment, kind of tying that into knowledge is power, and how we can do that is, I think often we're taught to live in extremes. And so it's either we hold on to our kids and to keep them safe, to protect them with Islamophobia, with all these things. I remember when I started wearing hijab, my mother and father, they're both very concerned because they knew going out there, I would be visibly Muslim. If I'm wearing the Palestinian hijab right now, there's like, another level of trauma that that I can experience outside. Mm-hmm. But with secure attachment, what happens is kind of like letting your child and letting yourself go explore, but knowing that there's a safe space to come back to. And really, I think the example of that we have is with Allah, in how Allah allows us to kind of be ourselves, to love ourselves, to be ourselves, and to be in this world and exist in this world, and guides us in a lot of the ways that we can be in our individual experiences. But we always have a lot to come back to. So things will happen, conflict will happen, we will experience negative experiences, we'll experience hardships, but we always have that secure base to come back to and kind of refuel, regroup, and gain that guidance and then go back. And mothers really are, and fathers too, but mothers really can be that strong base. In the way that I like to explain secure attachment is kind of like looking at it as like a circle. If you're the mother, letting your child kind of, when they're babies, we let them walk around, they fall, they trip, but then they look back to their mother to make sure they're okay. And in different developmental stages, it's different things. When your kid is in high school, they may fall and trip and have friendships that go bad, or have like, some right now, like when we have like attacks on schools and all, they may have that, but they may look back at their parents or their mothers to see, am I okay? What do I need to do? And have that secure base. And then gradually they're kind of graduating from that aspect, but they still keep looking back. Like I'm still looking back at my mom and saying, you know, does this look okay? Can I cook this today or something? So you have that secure base, but you're still exploring and going out around the world. That helps. And I'd love to hear from others too. So.
Go ahead, please, Noreen.
Sure. I love attachment theory. It's like one of my favorite things. So when I think about, okay, so there's secure attachment, there's insecure, and the insecure is avoidant. Then we have fearful, avoidant, or disorganized. We have anxious. The three core things that create insecure attachment that I see as a theme is, as a child, either your emotions and needs were either dismissed and neglected, or they were abandoned, or they were rejected. The child either felt rejected, abandoned, or dismissed. And that creates insecure attachment into adulthood. And insecure attachment, basically, essentially what it is what we need to foster in our kids is when they are in crisis, or if there's conflict, or there's something where they're emotionally dysregulated, does the parent dismiss them and say, oh, you'll be fine? And just doesn't, deal with their emotions? Do they reject them? Do they yell at them? Do they abuse them? Do they hurt them? Or do they abandon them and just, it's kind of like the dismissing. So that's what creates these attachments. So then what happens in adulthood, if those three things happen, if you're in a relationship, it can even be with a friendship. If you feel your friend, pulling away and you're an anxiously attached, you want to come, close. You want to close the gap. Dismissive avoidant people, they because their emotions were neglected as children, they never learned to identify their own feelings and emotions. They don't know how to access them. They're very self-sufficient, they're very independent, and they're like, I just deal with my stuff on my own. Why can't you deal with your stuff too, like me? So in a secure attachment, what you want to do, what we as parents need to do with our kids to make them secure adults, is when they come to us, they made a mistake, or there's some conflict, or there's something, validate their feelings, teach them to take accountability, teach them to empathize with the other person's perspective, and come to a solution together. When these things are modeled for the children, that, oh, I can come to mom with, a conflict or a mistake I made, and she's not going to, or dad's not going to, like, punish me and yell at me. They're going to say, it's okay, you made a mistake. I know you feel shame. I know you feel scared. I know you feel, validating those feelings, and then saying, what can we learn from this so we don't repeat this mistake again? Having those healthy dialogues instead of going straight to, yelling at our kids and sending them to the room and never processing their emotions with them, is what creates this, insecure attachment.
Thank you. May I add?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I think I want to kind of take it a slightly bit different, and I want to talk about mothers' secure attachment, at this point in our state. And part of that, I think, is making sure that as moms, we're surrounded by people who provide us security and this sense of support and comfort, that we're in an environment with our partner, our spouse, who makes us feel encouraged, who makes us feel supported, who helps us to be able to go through life knowing that even if we make mistakes, and early in my marriage, I put too much salt in the food. Brother Kareem was like, but as of course, that didn't last. We recognized that that was just the salt, and I didn't have to, feel, so he's been very supportive to me. We're going on, over 45 years of marriage now. So, but one of the things I'm recognizing is that those who have sought me out for counseling they didn't have the skill set early in the marriage to be able to provide the support and security for one another. And in this case, we're talking about moms. So like when a woman, has a child early on, most of the time, neither parent, mom or dad, knows what they're doing. Okay, it's their first child, they don't know what they're doing, and they're gonna lose a lot of sleep, but they need that security. And mom particularly needs, because of course we hear these, oh, she's a bad mom, she did, and whether we hear it or not, it's playing in the back of our head somewhere. And we need to have supportive spouses and families to help us to be the moms who will later on provide that security to our children, to provide that security and support to our children. And one of the challenges I think that we're having, of course, many of you may know that this is part of my mantra, is we're not choosing wisely. We're not choosing people, and we're not having the conversation before marriage about our potential spouse's ability to provide that kind of support and security that we're going to need down the road, so that we'll be able to provide that for our kids.
So if you don't mind, Dr. Anissa, since you've already started that topic, let's talk a little bit about that, because there is now scientific evidence that's very clear that even when a woman is pregnant, cortisol levels are going through the placental barrier. Fetuses are very much impacted in utero. So trauma can begin as early as that. We know trauma has an epigenetic root now. So there's other kinds of ways that trauma is being passed down. So this comes back to the preventative and the choosing wisely, and what are you doing to set the stage to even have children in a correct, more healthy environment. We're not going to be able to say perfect environment, but in a better and healthy environment. So speak to that a little bit, because there's a lot of factors I know you deal with in premarital counseling.
Yeah. One of the things that we think is really important is, first of all, helping the individuals to know themselves. So, a young woman who's, she may not have children yet. Allah may bless her with children later on or not, or she may already have had children, and maybe this is a second time around. She's looking at getting married again, but starting off by getting to know yourself, who you are, what are important factors. Did you experience some childhood traumas, or have you resolved some? Do you have some grief and loss that is unresolved? These are things that are going to be really. What are your core values? What are your core values? What are the things that you bring to the table that are important for compatibility? And what are the security things that you need? Some people need different things. That's part of that understanding of your love language. Words of affirmation are really helpful for me. They're different for different people. They're going to be different things. Knowing that I experienced this situation with my mom and my dad, it's important. For would have been important for my prospective spouse. Of course, we didn't know these things back then, 40-some years ago, to talk about. But these are things that I think are important. And then, of course, that whole vetting process that's going to help determine whether or not you're compatible. Is this the kind of person that's going to provide you as a woman, as a future, inshallah, future mom, nurturer, the kinds of support that you need to be the kind of Muslim, the kind of woman, the kind of mother, the kind of wife that you need to be. And I think that that choosing wisely is going to be a really important and key factor. Choosing wisely for you. Yeah. I think that's going to be really important.
Go ahead, Sister Sabrine.
I was going to say, one is like with that program for the nikah really dives deeper into like the different topics of choosing your person, but also getting to know yourself and in that aspect. one of the things that's really interesting is what you mentioned with the research and prenatal, how that affects the health of the baby and also the development. And again, I think it's not always one thing fits all, right? Like there are a lot of environment factors that can play into the development of the child. But really interesting when I was learning about that, I was reflecting on the story of Musa alayhi salam and how when his mother was carrying him and she was pregnant with him, it was that whole time of like the Quran going after babies and killing babies, killing boys. And so she really was pregnant with him inside of her and had this fear and anxiety with her that, you know, what's going to happen. And what we see in Prophet Musa's story is also that he has this anxiety and fear that he's also, you know, kind of journeying through and processing as Allah is helping him with that kind of journey and secure attachment. And so I really reflected on that of how Allah also teaches, like we hear about this research and all, but Allah has these things embedded in our religion and in our deen and in the stories and histories of teaching us how even with those adverse childhood experiences or prenatal impact, that we can come out and be by our own personal red seas and with that power really have tawakkul and you know get through it. But just wanted to kind of mention that.
That's an excellent one, especially because Allah specifically mentions how he kept it's a loving, watchful eye on him,
Yeah.
which is just kind of reassuring humans that
Right.
whether you have your parent or not. And
Right.
even when he asked him about throwing the cane, you know, he was like, throw it. He's like, what is that? He's like, I lean on it.
Exactly. And with his mother, what Allah describes that is that Allah comforted her grief.
Yes.
And even after giving birth, she was grieving and she had these, you know, like things. So, but Allah provided comfort to her, like grief. So, you know, and oftentimes I think maybe like even if we're going to touch on postpartum depression, oftentimes
please.
we don't consider that when mothers do give birth, that there is this postpartum depression that can come up, so a postpartum psychosis. And I was actually really, you know, it really makes me happy to see the men online here too. And we had it from the youth center in our masjid here. We had a workshop on postpartum depression with Dr. Venus, who really does a lot of research on this. And I was really happy to see a lot of husbands there. And you know what Dr. Nisa was also talking about, that support that we need from the family, because often we just put it all, like give everything to the mother and that she needs to take care of it. And if you don't, then you're not doing your job. But really it takes a village. It's aunties, uncles, librarians, teachers, fathers, like, you know, all of these that can play a role in it.
And that, you know, that's something I kind of wanted to bring up also about this piece that I think was brought early on by Dr. Montero a little bit about that kind of default sacrifice mode, that default, you know, I mean, Dr. Anissa, you also, when you were talking about the miscarriages and everybody just kind of like, it's kind of just accepted. Like, this is just part of who you are as a woman. This is just part of motherhood. This is just the journey that every woman should just be able to handle. It seems like isn't that what we're seeing and feeling, a lot of us? And if you make a big deal about it, it looks like you kind of are like, it's almost like we have the reverse of the machismo thing, right? It's for women now. It's like, this is, why can't you handle it? And I've heard husbands speak like that to their wives too. Like my mom had like 10 kids and she didn't complain. She didn't even have, you know, one epidural. You hear these stories. So speak a little bit about that, because that's a bit, you know, something I think women they're feeling, but very privately and individually, and not getting enough opportunity to share.
Well, I think that's part of why we're here. It's because we aren't talking about this, and the expectations about, you know, who we are and who we should be and what we should be able to handle. Yes, I think Dr. Nicole did kind of begin the discussion about it. Yeah, we don't talk enough about it, and the expectations just are really, I think they're just sometimes too much. And for some women, they just really are too much to bear. And that then leads to poor mental health and emotional well-being, because we get this message that we should be superwoman, and we should be able to do all of these things. I think in our one of our conversations earlier, Imogen, we were talking about having our own interests, and but not being the expectation that you should. And there was even, I think, when I was younger, there was this ad on, like you bring home the halal bacon, and then you do I mean, goodness gracious, we're human beings. But and there are things we want, like I'm a mom to the core. A lot of what I do is, and my husband knows that, but that his understanding of that and his support of that makes me a better wife. It makes me a better social worker. It makes me a better sister and aunt. And, I'm able to do those things because I'm able to be the kind of um, the mother that I want to be, and with the support, but also the expectation that I'm a human being and that I have limitations, and I think that that's an important thing. And I don't think we give enough to that. We don't speak enough to that and give enough recognition to that.
Sure, Sister Serene.
I was going to say, it also kind of, we talk about the trauma, but that essence of not recognizing our needs and kind of giving, it also adds to the cycle, especially with daughters, because what they see is their mothers giving, not recognizing their own needs. So then they also do that with friendships, and when they get married, that's I think, Noreen, you touched upon that too, is just giving, and kind of losing ourselves and our essence in that. And that really has a profound impact on mental health, because it really can make a person kind of like lose their grounding. And so I think it's really important to teach ourselves as mothers. I mean, I'm not a mother yet, but inshallah, like that's something I'm conscious of as I'm planning to be a mother, and as an auntie as well, like that, how do I balance taking care of my needs and also teaching these young children that their needs are important, and that there's a balance, because we can go on either extreme with the individualistic society that we live in. It's like me, myself, and I, and you do you. That kind of separates us as well. And there's like a really beautiful balance that Islam teaches us on giving and receiving, and in holding ourselves accountable as well for that.
And if you don't mind, I'm actually going to piggyback on that and go to Noreen a little bit on also, because I know we're in the same group chat for single mothers too, where she's also been, as a coach, seeing all the single moms. And I just want to bring that in a little bit, not to make it like, ooh, single moms are the only ones struggling, not at all. But I think that they're kind of layered stressors, and single motherhood can be its own added large stress. Mothers of children with special needs, also a lot of kids who have and we're seeing an increasing number of children with health needs. But Noreen, if you can speak a little bit about that piece on how to kind of navigate the self-care, the care of the kids, the boundaries, all of that piece too, because that's simultaneously going on with single moms who are trying to, have to be both parents at the same time, much of the time.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I don't know if I'm the best person to speak on this. Yes, I see it a lot, but it's something I've had to balance myself. So, as I mentioned before, like I was an overgiver. I gave too much of my time, my energy, whether it was in the community or to other people in the family, and I was very much neglecting myself. Um, just not taking care of my emotions, my physical health, my mental health, spiritual, like everything was like, it was like life was being sucked out of me, and I was just pouring. And yeah, that can affect your mental health. Like we're human and we have limits. Um, and for myself personally, being a single parent, I I remember when I came out, I was like, I can do everything. And I could. Alhamdulillah, I worked full time. I worked in finance. I knew how to run my house, take care of the kids, pay my bills, do all this. And I was volunteering and I was doing SEMA and I was doing this. But, it was actually my father that came to me and said, you need to take a step back. Like, you're way too involved in way too many things. And you need to give yourself and your kids like a little bit more. You're overextending yourself outwardly. And sometimes this can also be a coping mechanism. We're kind of avoiding our own feelings and emotions and our traumas and whatever. So we're like, oh, I'll volunteer here and I'll do this and I'll do that instead of taking the time. SubhanAllah, I went through something this past year and I feel like Allah like kind of hit a reset button for me. It's been a year and it was tough, but what he taught me in that time was it's okay to ask for help. We're not super women. Like Sister Nicole said in the beginning, it takes a village. It's okay. Like sometimes a lot of us moms are like perfectionists and we don't want people to know that we're struggling and this is going on, that's going on. It's okay to be vulnerable and to say, I'm having a really hard time and this is really tough. And I know I try to be there for everybody, but right now I need support too. And the people who care about you will, step in and want to support you too. Um, what else can I say on this? Yeah, he taught me, yeah, it's okay to ask for help. Number two, he taught me tawakkul in him. Alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to go for Umrah. And Hajara, when she was left as a mother in the desert, no husband, no family, no support, no food, no water, nothing. And she's running back and forth, just making dua to Allah. She was basically she knew Allah would not abandon her, that He's going to be there for her, that He is her provider. And that, alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity while I was going through a hard time, that Allah is Ar-Razaq, He is our provider. We have to trust that He's not going to abandon us and our kids. He's going to be there to make sure that we're okay. And when you truly submit yourself and to His power, He will do things that you cannot even imagine. The third thing he taught me was sabr. We are such impatient people. We want everything now. We want answers now. We want, whatever now. And Allah's timing is always perfect. He blesses us with His rizq when He knows is the best time for you. I saw that, and so these things, I think these are like just core things as mothers and then as single moms that we need to remember. Tawakkul, sabr, and that Allah is our Razak. He is our provider. And as single moms, sometimes you're basically in a masculine role. You're like a man. You have people depending on you. And it also, like, as I have a son, and I tell my son, I was telling him recently, he's 13, and I was telling him, I took my own lesson and I said, as a man, as a Muslim man, when you grow up, you have to be the provider for your family, and you have to have the tawakkul. That I was like, you need to study hard, you need to work hard, but you're going to have a lot of people depend on you, your wife, your kids, and you need to trust in Allah. You need to make dua to Him every day that He gives you the capacity, the mental capacity, the physical capacity, your hands, your feet, whatever, that you can, do it and provide. And how many single moms are in that role, where we're having, like, Allah, give us our mental capacity. We dealt with a lot of trauma. We dealt with, give us strength, our hands, our feet, our mental capacity to do a job and provide for our kids. So yeah, it's a struggle for single moms, and you mentioned like moms with kids with disabilities. I worked a lot with Mohsin, another organization for Muslims with disabilities. That's very challenging, especially for single moms. Um, I've seen some single moms that have support, you know, from their parents or other family members. I can't speak a lot on it because I don't have it, but you know, Allah tests us all in so many different ways, and you know, my heart goes out to those moms that are, yeah, single moms dealing with you know, disabled children or handicapped children or autistic or whatever it is. It's the strength that they must have, subhanAllah, you know.
And there's going back to a lot of this as a single mom, also, I have to say, I always felt that my children were also the blessing that pulled me out of my depression, out of my issues, my self-centeredness, which happens a lot when you feel like you're struggling. But Dr. Anissa or Sister Sabrine, did you want to add into this also? Good. Okay. And so then moving on a little bit, there's one more thing I kind of wanted to bring up so far as all of you have worked with clients and patients who've been in modes where there's a lot of survival mode going on for women. I feel like I've been there, done that, and I can see in families, not just the wife, but the husband, they're both kind of in a survival mode setting where it's just day in, day out, take care of the kids, do the work, do this, do that. How do you help them reevaluate, reshift, get the focus back, you know, whether spiritually, whether pragmatically, whatever, like, but shift out of that, because I feel like that survival mode is the part where many people are stuck in a kind of in a rut, in a loophole, and that's where they're not being able to see beyond just this is what I have to do every day. This is what I have to do for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. This is my life, you know, that kind of thing. Sister Sabrine, do you want to?
Sure. I think when you ask that question, one of the first things that comes to my mind is the ayah in the Quran that says, "Where are you going?" Because, you know, we're in this rut, we're just chasing, and Allah like really kind of grounds us and brings us back with, where are you going? So in that survival mode, I think one of the things to consider is like the comparisons we make. What are we really, like, you know, with everything that we have going on, having a clean home, having to like take all our kids to soccer games, having them at all these, just being busy all the time, where are we going? And who are we comparing to? Is it that, you know, the keeping up with the Joneses concept of having to keep up with what everyone else is doing, but it may not serve me in my time and the stage that I am in. And so to recognize that, and the noise that we're having, I think right now in the age of social media, AI, and our brains are kind of hijacked, and we're watching, you know, on these reels, the perfect households, the perfect families, but behind that, you know, and I see a lot of times these people that come to me too, they post things, and behind the scenes, there's another story that's going on, but it's really messing with the psyche of people in that this is what I have to achieve. And when they have that vision in mind, it kind of hijacks our system, our nervous system, so that we do get into the survival mode. And our window of tolerance gets a little bit shorter because that's where we're functioning. We're not in our calm zone. And so we're kind of in that hypoarousal where we shut down and can't keep up. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy, and get all of these negative thought cycles. Or are we going to fight or flight and kind of, you know, leave our senses behind and try to keep up and chase this world? And so I think the two really important things to consider is, what are we comparing ourselves to in the noise that we have? And the noise can also actually not come from it. Social media plays a big role, and society plays a big role, but it's also the noise that we hear from family members, friends, or something, the shoulds and you could or something, those statements sometimes are not relevant to what we're going through. And I hear this all the time from clients that I work with or families that I work with that, well, my mother-in-law said this and my father-in-law said this, or that my friend said this and my friend has this. And it's like, but that's not your story. That's not where you are at. And it doesn't apply to you. And so I think recognizing that, because if we do help ourselves get out of survival mode, we can really help to fill the buckets of us that need to be filled with the spirituality, with our emotions, and value ourselves for who we are.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. So Dr. Anissa or Noreen, did you want to add into that? Okay. So, and I really appreciate you talking about the window of tolerance, because I think that that's one of the biggest areas of difficulty for parents, is a lot of the dysregulation part that happens within themselves, but then simultaneously being in a position where they're having to help regulate a child that's dysregulated. And you see that. So you see parents who just kind of give up and either go one extreme or go another extreme. And they're just like, vacillating between the two, finding that balance that Allah is constantly calling on us to have is a lot harder than it looks, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's when we're not regulated ourselves, and it impacts how the children are. But even I think sometimes even in that, when I'm teaching people and talking to people about that, even in that, I think sometimes people perceive that as I need to know how to be regulated. But it's really like the whole getting to know yourself. Like, okay, this thing is getting me dysregulated. How do I communicate that to my family that, look, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, a little dysregulated right now. I need to take 5 minutes. Let me just go sip my coffee or just sit outside in nature or take a shower, whatever that helps regulate. And that's actually teaching generations of like, okay, I can get dysregulated. I can have emotional dysregulation, and what I just need to do is soothe myself. And this is the tool that I have. And so, like, I was talking to my sister-in-law, and she was like kind of trying to teach this to her kids. And her, I think 2-year-old, 3-year-old, I like teach mothers to have like coping wheels. And so the kids can kind of choose from and her 2 or 3-year-old son, he said making owl sounds would help soothe him. And you know, nobody could have thought of that. She couldn't have thought of that. I couldn't have thought, but he knew kind of instinctively that this making this sound helps him in some way or some form. But there's also like, subhanAllah, it's actually like when we do tajweed and we're making these syllables and sounds, there's actually the science behind humming and sounds that also help soothe our nervous system. So there's this instinctual kind of thing that helps, but to help recognize and to help teach that this can happen with me as a mother too. And then there's also repair and rupture, right? Like when mothers, we can also have moments where we aren't regulated. We do kind of snap at our kids or, say something. But then if we go back and repair that and say, look, I kind of was not regulated. I was having a bad day and I snapped at you and I shouldn't have done that. That's also really empowering the kids and having a real relationship. And so there's always a chance of repair and rupture, because perfectionism is not perfection is what we kind of see ourselves as, but it's not real. It's not what we can sustain.
I'm so glad you brought that last point up in particular, because I've seen a lot of that, and various cultures have it, but some maybe more than others. But across the board, I feel like it comes from something inner, which is an inner critic that just doesn't allow you to make mistakes. And because of that, there's an arrogance. That's a false arrogance. It's a false pride because it's coming out of an insecurity. But I see a lot of women who cannot apologize to their kids. They can't admit, and you see, I feel like you definitely see that more in men. Just saying. I mean, from the men I've experienced, I'm not saying all men are like that, but just because I know the machismo factor is very, very strong in male culture. But I do see it a lot in women too, and mothers. So that's fascinating, you know.
Yeah, it comes from different places, I think, but it's important to know that there is power behind that, power behind apologizing, and it's actually kind of freeing because it's not that we have to know the answers all the time, and we have to be perfect all the time. And I think that really helps in ensuring healthy development for ourselves and for our kids. Because when we become mothers, we don't stop developing, right? Like we become mothers at different ages. But even if someone becomes a mother later on in years, it's not that they stop developing. We're still growing creatures.
Thank you. Well, I know that there's going to be questions in Q&A now, and I think some of them may talk about getting into resources and tools. So I'm going to move myself over and out. Thank you guys so much. This was really, really helpful. And thank you for answering these great questions that, really needed to get that conversation going. Shema, I'm going to hand it back over to you. Thank you so much. And she's going to take over and we'll deal with fielding some of these questions, inshallah, so our audience can have a little bit of response to what they needed. All right, Jazakumullah khairan, guys. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Anjum, for that really, really cohesive moderating, really just appreciated all the speakers, Noreen, Sister Sabrine, Dr. Anisa, and also Sister Anjum, how you brought in your experiences and brought everything together. Thank you so much to all of you. We'll take the next, 10, 15 minutes or so for some questions. We have about 2 kind of themes of questions that came up, and then we'll turn it back to each of you for any last closing remarks before we end. So one of the themes that came up in the questions was, if there was some lack of emotional availability, in the mothering when a child was younger, how is that balanced with their effect of that child's environment when they get bigger? If you have had a difficult childhood, is that going to impact you for the rest of your life? Or does that effect become negligible because of your environment later on? What is that balance? And then another sister, Karen, asked, how can we actually get comfortable to bring up these topics so that to start that healing process? And then just to kind of weave that together, is therapy something that can help to process our childhood? And if you could therapy seems like, oh, if you need therapy, that means you're really sick and that you must be really in a bad state. Could you talk about what therapy can help with, and if there's a particular type of therapy that can be helpful to mothers? To any of you.
Wow.
Okay, I'll go.
Go ahead,
No,
Noreen.
let Dr. Nisa go.
No, you go
Dr.
ahead.
Nisa, you go, please.
Well, so Shema, can you repeat the first one of those questions? Because that triggered something for me.
Yeah,
That first
sure.
part of it.
The brother was asking, if there was some difficult childhood experience where the mother was emotionally unavailable for that child, does that carry on for the rest of that child's life? Or do the experiences later on, cancel that out? How do you balance that
Okay.
early life with later experiences and how
Okay,
that
so
person
I'll start and I'll let my psychotherapist kind of jump in there. But what I can say is that it doesn't have to have a negative impact later on. I think part of it has to do with the social support network that's been around the child. Okay. I speak for myself. I had those challenges, but I also had people who loved me and encouraged me at home and in school. And so that made a big difference. And then as I got older and went into the profession, I gained some understanding and I have a good support network of friends and family. And so I think that helped to mitigate. I won't say it's gone because it certainly impacted me and what I do and why I do what I do. And sometimes I don't, I'm still growing, I'm probably one of the oldest folks on here. But I'm still growing. And I recognize, and I have conversations with my children and my husband, and I was like, oh, now, okay, that's making sense of why, it comes from some other things that happened when I was younger that I didn't even realize, but now but I think the support that I had over time helped to mitigate the circumstances. So our therapists, go ahead and jump in there because I know y'all have more therapeutic way of kind of putting some of that. And then we can kind of go back to maybe the other, some of the other, well, I'm going to say this. Yes, I think therapy can help. I think therapy is important. Therapy is not for, just when you have hit rock bottom. Of course, by then you certainly, you know, I'm a prevention specialist. These folks work on the treatment side of things. So I think getting help the sooner, the earlier, the better. But at the same time, I'm so grateful for our therapists because they're recognizing and helping to guide us through some difficult times, crisis time, and also on the treatment end of things. So I think, and I support our therapists. And so I would really encourage, if you have a good therapist, and you have to have somebody who you're compatible with, who you feel comfortable with, who you feel understands you, but also will help to give you who's a trusted advisor and good guidance as a professional. I think that that's really important. So those are some of the things that I would speak to in the questions that you shared. Ladies.
Noreen, you can go first. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, just piggybacking. I mean, alhamdulillah, Dr. Nisa had a good adult experience. She had a lot of support. Life can go either way. And I talked about some patterns that kind of develop in childhood subconsciously. And sometimes you can get into relationships that repeat the same pattern that you had in childhood that are unhealthy. And so you end up in adult relationships that are unhealthy because that's familiar to you. You didn't see anything different. So yes, it can follow you into adulthood. Um, so it's just, I think at some point you kind of get some self-awareness. You're like, hey, this doesn't seem okay. This doesn't seem healthy. Maybe I need to talk to somebody. How do we get support? How do we open ourselves up? I mean, that's what SEMA was about. When my sisters and I started SEMA, we realized that we were children in Arkansas. We had no Muslims around, no one that we felt very alone. Like Dr. Nisa said, she felt very alone. Like, who could we talk to? And we didn't understand. And the thing is, when you have a family member with mental illness, you are the first responder for getting that person help. So if you don't know the signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety, OCD, all these things, you can't recognize it. You know something's wrong, but you don't know exactly what's wrong. But if you educate yourself on these basic mental health issues, you can say, hey, it sounds like you're depressed. Maybe you should talk to a therapist. Maybe you should get some professional help. Um, so the support groups with SEMA is to educate the community as well as support for the family members, loved ones, because we're affected by the people who are mentally ill. We're experiencing their depression in the home, their anxiety in the home, their OCD, and whatever it is. So we're impacted. So we need support too. Or maybe they're suicidal and you're like, I need to talk to somebody. I don't know how to help my friend who's always, talking about killing themselves or something like that. So this is a support for you to how you can help support a loved one, friend, family, whoever. Does therapy help? Yes, absolutely. I'm an advocate for mental health. I'll tell you for myself personally, I didn't even know I had trauma from my childhood. When I first went to therapy, my therapist said, why are you here? She was like, you've got this great career in finance, you're a mom of 4 kids, I was married at the time. On the outside, everything looked picture perfect. And I was really suppressing, neglecting a lot of my emotions because that's what I was taught from childhood. that everyone else's feelings and needs matter, mine don't. So I told her, I was like, I can cry for everybody else, but I can't cry for myself. So I need to learn how to like feel things and like it's a a trauma response. I had no idea. And it was when we had started SEMA. My mom passed away in 2012. This is 2017. And for the first 6 months, I didn't even talk about my mom. It was so traumatic, I couldn't even talk about it, and eventually it started coming out. Once I started, like, getting in touch with my feelings and emotions, then I could start talking about, bigger things. So, yeah, I don't alhamdulillah, haven't been diagnosed with anything, but I just needed help processing, and therapy can help you just process and or, you know, why am I not moving up in my career? What can you help me with? What are the roadblocks that in my mind what are my fears from like going for that promotion? Like therapy can help with so many other things in life. So, or couples counseling, Dr. Anissa has a before the nikah, like premarital counseling. Like it helps with so many different aspects. So yes, therapy, I will always advocate for therapy 100%.
I'll just add really quickly, I think for three parts of your question. Really quickly, I'll just touch on therapy because I think the importance of therapy is, but therapy basically is what I see it as is allowing deeper access for yourself. And so what it really does is really asks these poignant questions that can really, I myself went to therapy and I was discovering things that, oh, this is what it is, and this is where this is coming from. And it really strengthens you. And finding a good fit is really important in a therapist. Because I also had the other experiences where I had really horrible fits, and that's another conversation. But to your question about the emotionally unavailable parents and or any kind of trauma that happens, there's this story that's often taught when we're studying is if two sons grow up with a father who uh, has substance abuse, as alcoholic. If two sons grow up, they can grow up in either one of the ways. One son can become an alcoholic because that's what he saw, and the other son can actually become completely opposite and really advocate for something else and have healthier habits because that's what he saw. And so it's also choosing what we do in the environment, the support that we have, people that we have around us, but also knowing that Allah has created these experiences for us in this fitra in us, and some personality types or some traits that if we honor, and through therapy we can actually access them deeper and kind of reflect on things, that we can actually also play a part in how we're navigating our path. So it doesn't always have to impact negatively. It can also impact positively when you have something that's a traumatic experience in your childhood. And the third part of talking about this, I think we just have to start. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because often when we have these conversations, it's like, oh, I don't know how people are going to take it. I don't know how people are going to like, but to be uncomfortable with that awkwardness that people may, respond in a way. Like I always laugh that if someone's there talking about brand names or I don't even know all the brand names, but I'll be very awkward. I don't know what to answer. But talk to me about your trauma and I'm right there in the conversation. So it's learning to navigate these spaces so that we can encourage people to talk about it. And once the conversation gets started, you'll notice people will start saying like, oh yeah, I was talking to some people about even Black Lives Matter. When that movement was happening, they were kind of unsure of it. I brought them to their own trauma that they could relate to, like, colonization and how that has impacted how they're responding to things. And they're like, yeah, that's actually true. And so it kind of gets people to start thinking, but it's to have, all of the people that are in this room even to go out and start talking about it, 5, 10 people that can really impact the spaces that we exist in.
Thank you, Sister Sabrine and
Can
Sister
I
Angela.
add something to that?
Yes,
Yeah,
please
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to add that one of the things that we need to develop is a community of belonging, a community where we all feel like we belong, and that we're not going to be judged. We want to work, I think, to the point that Sabrine just mentioned, that we want to work to end the stigma. Part of the challenges that we have is because we're not talking about it because we feel like we're going to be judged. And so that has promoted, I mean, we have societally this problem with stigma, but we need to end the stigma within our own community so that people, that moms, that women, that men, that families can get the help that they need. And this is a big reason for even this beginning this kind of conversation today. But we need a community that wraps our arms around each other and says, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, it's a matter of not what's wrong with you, but what happened. What happened and how can I help? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anissa, Sister Noreen, and Sister Sabrine. There's a lot of questions coming, and unfortunately, we're coming close to the end of our time. And as Sister Anjum said at the beginning, there's no way we can, Inshallah, this is just opening that door and beginning that conversation. And hopefully, these will all spark conversations where all of you are. I think I will ask one more question that you know, and then this brings up some of the things about you know, therapy that we talked about, and also other ways. You know, you've said in the past that it takes a village, you know, to raise a child, not just that one mom doing everything, being that super mom. What can, you know, community groups, masajid, what can they all do to support mothers in their roles? If we can just end with that, and then we'll go on to closing remarks after. If each of you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think we probably all have different perspectives, but excuse me, I think I'll kind of go back to this sense of creating a community of belonging. You know, I think we aren't getting full use of our masajids. I think we're just making them places to go pray Juma. And I think the masjids need to be more available throughout the week. You know, things like mothers support groups. I know there are a lot of mothers who are feeling kind of lonely, and they're trying to find also play groups. They're finding play groups for the kids, but also they want socialization for themselves. I think that that's important. Brother Archie Aquino here in Arizona has worked with our local one of our local masjids to start what they call Compassion Connection. And that's with an effort to encourage kind of the compassion and the support in the masjid. You know, he was already working with the Islamic Social Services Association, volunteering kind of more on the, you know, larger level, but, you know, right in the community, because what we need to have within the community, within the masjid community, is this sense that if I come to my masjid, there's help. Of course, Adam Center, the Imam Majid has at Adam Center, they have a social worker right on staff at the masjid. You know, those are, and the imams need to have a greater connection with the professionals and the professionals with the imams. Like we shouldn't be in separate silos. You know, we need to be working together, you know, as professionals and imams and community leaders and volunteers to be, I think, more helpful and to provide the kinds of support networks. We need grief and loss networks. I mean, we've had so many, you know, deaths in our community, but we're not doing much around, you know, grief. We have the 40 days or the 3 months for the widow, and you know, we even talk about young widows who are mothers, you know. I mean, so there's a lot to be done, and I think that our masjids really need to be more open to it. And I think that they're just not open enough. And we need to get our imams to maybe be more trained in like some pastoral care. You know, we work with the professionals, but also maybe have some pastoral care so they have knowledge about signs and how to refer to those who are maybe more professional in a particular area.
I think going off of that, yesterday actually, one of the massages here in Sacramento, they had a mother's daughters workshop that I did, and you know, just having that conversation started and having that in the masjid space, both the mothers and the daughters were really kind of coming and saying like, we never thought about it this way, or we never really have these conversations. And I could tell that it really was impacting them. So for masjids and community centers to really bring these kind of events, and it could be, at Khalid Center we have a community response training, CRT, that also kind of teaches community about these things and different topics of mental health. And I also see the comment the brother said about not having like enough Muslim therapists, which is so true. We're trying so hard to fulfill the demand, but alhamdulillah, it's a lot better now than it was before. And sometimes it's also like we're balancing kind of that Islamic therapy aspect and providing with also being ethical. So if there are therapists that don't have expertise and someone comes in, we also have to balance that Islamically and ethically as well. But I think having these conversations started in smaller and larger scales, having halakas where mothers can go and kind of be in a space where they can develop spiritually, and the family steps in to take care of the kids at that time, in teaching and really empowering people with knowledge, that would really kind of have a significant impact in changing societies. Because as mothers, they learn to navigate and take care of themselves, which they're not taught to. I think it's again being that uncomfortable, or being comfortable being uncomfortable, as the community shifts in providing those resources.
Yeah, and let me just add before Noreen goes, Sabrine and Sister Nohal Shagari do some excellent training around parenting skills. And I think that the masjid's a good place to offer those, parenting skills training. They should hire them to come in and provide parenting skills training, them and other experts in those areas. So I just want to add that. And with a focus on parents, moms and dads, and then particularly maybe some of the extras around, things that moms will need.
And I'll add to that it's not a one-time thing, because sometimes masjids be like, well, look, we provided a parenting workshop for 3 hours. But it's sometimes it's ongoing, right? Like ongoing series. Even yesterday when I was talking to the organizers and the mothers, and they said we need to have this. And I agreed, I couldn't cover everything in 2 hours that they gave, but it gets the conversation started.
Sister Noreen,
yeah, they covered a lot of things. As far as like support for, there's organization here in Chicago by a Muslim woman, and her organization has a really great, having these support groups is one thing, but sometimes we need practical support, like come into our homes and help us, right? So she has something where she has professionally trained Muslimas give caregiving for women, babysitting, sitters that are Muslim, experienced and verified, laundry, tidying and organizing rooms such as closets and pantry, event setup and cleanup, serving your guests food and drink at events. And I know like a lot of single moms, like sometimes we need help with like handyman type work in our house, so maybe if there's some brothers that are like willing to support some sisters, like with some of those types of things. I don't know if they're willing to, but I know the women really do come together and say, we can babysit, we can help you with cleaning up, and or that's so beneficial and so great. Yeah, that's all I have to add to that.
Thank you, Sister Noreen and Sister Sabrine and Dr. Anissa for that. I wish we had more time. We have several questions. And before we do our closing dua, I want to just let everybody know that this event was recorded or is being recorded. And inshallah, in the next few weeks, we will be having this recording on our ISSA-USA.org website. And Sister Damie will be putting the links in the chat. I want to also just before we thank our sponsors, I want to just ask all three of you and also Sister Anjum before. Thank you so much for your comments today. Do you have one last kind of sentence that you would like to share with all of us as we close today of next steps? And also one of the questions was about how, how regulating our own emotions, how that affects our children and those around us. So if you can just kind of end on your thoughts of what we can do moving forward from today. Dr. Anissa, would you like to start?
I'll start. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us, our panel members, the participants, our moderator and our MC, all of you, and our tech folks, Zarina and Damie behind the scenes. So I just want to thank you all because, sometimes you come up with an idea and I feel like Allah just blessed me one fudger. It's like, and I went to the team and we all said, yes, yes, we should do it. But you come up with an idea and if nobody wants to do it, it doesn't happen. But this was a resounding yes. And so, and with the participation here, I think it's an indication of how important this is. And so all I can say is thank you. Thank you. It helps me, my inner child. and just kind of thinking, back then you weren't alone and you're not alone today. And anybody feeling like you may be alone today or may have been alone, know that you're not. So it just kind of reiterates and just kind of just gives me that warm kind of hug that I need, the self-regulating, the positive self-talk, the love of Allah. I'm just grateful. For those of you who don't know, I'm a convert to Islam, so I didn't grow up in a Muslim family. But I grew up in a loving family. I had folks who did love me. And so I'm just very grateful that I had that and I have my Muslim family today. So thank you all for wanting to have this conversation, and let's keep the conversation going. That's the thing I want to say is keep the conversation going. Don't let it stop here. When the recording is available, have a watch party. Say, I went to this great webinar and come on, let's get together and sit down together over coffee or tea, watch it, and then let's talk about it. And let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Dr. Anissa. Sister Noreen, would you like to go next with your last closing comment?
Just thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, Sister Anju, for inviting me. Dr. Anissa, love ISSA. I love the work that you do. I love how we connected years ago. This was a very important topic, motherhood. We all have mothers, we're moms. And just the support that we can give to each other is so important. And just so happy to see everybody here supporting us and supporting each other with our mental health and our children, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Noreen. Sister Sabrina, any last comments?
Yeah, no, I think Noreen and Dr. Anissa touched on it. And I think we have like 30 people here. We have started this conversation, and I always say to people that you can always blame me, so you can go ahead and tell people I was part of this panel and I was having this conversation and Sabrine was saying this or Dr. Anissa was saying this, and it kind of removes you from some level, but also gives you this power to start talking to people about these things. And I love the watch party idea. We have Super Bowl watch party. I love that idea, but I think the main takeaway would be to have conversation with others, but also with yourself, because often we take these and then we're like, I have to go tell others about this. But first, we have to tell ourselves, what did we learn from it, reflect on it on ourselves, and then that empowers us to even have more of these conversations outside.
Thank you, Sister Sabrine. And Anjum, any last comments from you as a moderator and as a mom and professional as well?
Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khairan to everybody, to the whole team and to the panelists. This was fabulous and I really got to enjoy and feel privileged to do this. I do want to just add that just from my own journey that, part of one of the reasons why motherhood is so special, not just when we become mothers, but when we watch our mothers, is because it should be a humbling experience. And I think no matter what we see, but from our own mothers, it should speak volumes into our soul and our spirit and our hearts. And so I think that dealing with the spiritual journey of the ego and the nafs and getting that under control has been a big part of it. And so I just urge Muslim women and sons and fathers and husbands. I would love for all of us to look at the ego piece of what we're battling and dealing with our nafs when it comes to how we are, impacting next generations. So if we can get ourselves into that mode of humility and humbleness, then that truly, and follow the ways of the prophets, Allah's blessings be on all of them, then I think, inshallah, we can always get back on track, always.
Inshallah.
And I'm going to do a watch party for sure. I love it.
Yeah. Shema, before you do the closing, I just want to ask everybody to make dua for Brother Kareem. That's my husband. One is his amazing support, but he also has his birthday today. He turned 70 today. So may Allah bless him. And so if you all would keep him and us in your dua, we just really appreciate that.
Jazakallah khair to all of our speakers, Dr. Anisa, Sister Sabrine, Sister Noreen, our moderator, Anjum. Yeah, I'm also, just as a last comment, I'm very blessed that both my mother is on this webinar today, as well as my mother-in-law, and I'm so grateful for their example and their mentorship. And just, I remember when I went for Hajj, many years ago, my parents were taking care of my son, and I realized then, us as mothers, even though we feel like the weight of our whole family is on our shoulders, Allah is the provider. Really. And all of us moms, we feel like we're the only ones that can do anything, but we are just a means by which Allah shows his love. So we also, should reach out when we need, and we should, realize our role and always ask for Allah's guidance and his blessings in whatever we do, because he gave us this challenge and he's there to support us as well. And I would just like all of you to always stay in touch with us. This is just the beginning of a conversation, and I apologize for all of the questions in the chat that we couldn't address in detail. Inshallah, we'll have more of these kinds of webinars in the future. You can always go to ISSA-USA.org to see the video recording of this session, as well as others we've had on men's mental health and other topics. And we want to really thank our sponsors, the Khalil Center, as well as Before the Nikah Institute, for all of their work in therapy as well as prevention. And I just want to end with a dua, and inshallah, we thank all of our participants for being here today. So inshallah, subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Purity belongs to Allah, and all praise be to him. Purity belongs to you, O Allah, and all praise be to you. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship besides you. I beg forgiveness from you, and I repent before you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr, by time. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Indeed, humankind is in loss. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Except for those who have believed and done righteous deeds and advised each other to truth and advised each other to patience. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Jazakallah khair to all of you for joining us, and we hope to see you again in future sessions. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.